Hello, and welcome to Battle Report number 7. This is going to be the first game of the Masters Open, the side event running along with a Masters. And I've brought my Kingdom of Equitaine. I mentioned in the last video that I was playing them last year, and I've really enjoyed them so far, so I don't see myself going back to Dwarves anytime soon. It's just a lot more fun having an actual magic phase and some control over the movement. Really enjoyed the change from Dwarves to Knights. So, round 1, I was drawn against Daemon Legions. So let's take a look at the lists, shall we? So before I get started, you might notice that a couple of them are in bold. This tournament was using detachment lists. So when we submitted our lists, we were able to choose up to 1,000 points that could be as a detachment to hand in 2 detachments. I'm not explaining this very well. Basically, you had a main list and 2 detachments, and then at the beginning of each game, you got to pick between 2 attachments, so it could be your core or your general or anything. As long as the whole full points was 4,500, perfectly fine. And they had to be whole units, you couldn't change the upgrades for characters. So, on with my list. So I've got a Duke on a Hippogriff, and he's my general. He's got a shield, a Questing Oath and Bastard Sword. The Bastard Sword is enchanted with Blessed Inscriptions to give him those sweet, sweet rerolls to wound. He's got Basalt Infusion for a 3-up ward against flaming and +1 armor. He's got the Black Knight's Tabard, so he's real hard to kill. Obsidian Rock for a little bit of magic resistance, and the Virtue of Renown, which means on a 6 to wound, he's causing lethal strike and multiple wounds D3, which mixed with Blessed Inscriptions is really good. Next, I've got a Damsel on a Unicorn. She's a Wizard Master of Divination, and I've given her the Dragonfire gem because I had 20 points to spare, and I thought that was an interesting item to use on her. It means I can, against particular lists, I can cowboy her, basically, if they've got enough flaming shooting, which I predicted there might be, but with ID running around at the moment. Either way, I thought it was a fun item to use on there. Then next, I've got a Paladin on Barded Warhorse with a shield. He's my Battle Standard Bearer, and his standard is enchanted with the Stalker standard. He's got a lance, and he's wearing the Crown of the Wizard King, which, as I've said in a previous game, is a lot of fun, if not fantastic. And then he's got a Grail Oath. Then for my final character, I've got another Damsel on a Barded Warhorse. She's a Wizard Adept of Druidism, and she's got Talisman of the Void for an extra channel. And onto my core, I've got 11 Knights of the Realm with full command and Banner of the Last Charge. I have a small unit of Knights of the Realm with a Standard Bearer and Musician, and a little dart of Knights Aspirant with a Musician. Then I've got 8 Knights of the Grail with the Standard Bearer, Musician, Champion with the Oriflamme. So that means any unit that he's in contact with don't get to use their BSB reroll. They don't get to use Rally Around the Flag. And in addition, that model causes fear, which is so far not come into use in any of my games because I've played against, spoilers, demons, cultists, and warriors of the Dark Gods. So it's been fantastic so far. Then 8 Knights of the Quest with full command, 5 Yeoman Outriders with shields and throwing weapons, and finally 3 Pegasus Knights with loose formation, Vanguard, and a champion. And then my opponent's list. So for his general, he's got the Maw of a Khan, so that's the Gluttony Greater Demon, the one that gains wounds as it does wounds, which I took a look at and decided that was very scary. If he starts eating my models and becomes harder to kill with my load model count, that's real bad for me. He's got the Greater Dominion. He's a Wizard Adept of Evocation. Iron Husk gives him Resilience 6. Next up, he's got a Sentinel of Nakuja, which is the Greater Demon of Sloth, I think. It's the Wizard Master that gets to convert fail tokens at a 2-to-1 ratio instead of 3-to-1, which is also scary, and he comes as a Wizard Master as basic, so he's a Wizard Master of Thaumaturgy. Onto his core, he's got a big block of Myrmidons with Whipcrack Tail, which gives them lightning reflexes and full command. Then 12 Succubi with Dark Hide and full command, Dark Hide being the upgrade that gives them Scout within their own deployment zone. 10 Lumières with full command. Then 6 Hoarders with Mirrored Scales and full command. Mirrored Scales means if I rolled a 1 to hit, then he can reflect the hits back at me, I believe. I'll have to double check and throw that once I'm wrong. Then he's got a Blazing Glory with Horns of Hubris, which gives him a 6-inch Vanguard. 6 Eidolons with Aura of Despair, so that's a -2 for units charging that unit. 2 units of 6 Hellhounds with Incendiary Ichor, which means he does flaming attacks and he's also got a 2-up flaming ward. And finally 5 Furies with Darkhide again. So this is our deployment. I've deployed in the top. And this is after my Vanguard moves, or the Vanguard moves total rather. So I've got my Yeoman on the left, vanguarded right up just behind that house to give them some cover against magic and shooting for the first turn. I've got my Banner of the Last Charge realms with the Damsel in them next, then the Hippogriff, the Grail BSB with the Grail Knights in the ruins. Of course, he's got the Stalker standard, so he and his unit ignore dangerous terrain checks. Then the Unicorn Damsel is in with the Knights of the Quest, a small units of realms and a unit of aspirants, and then the Pegasus have vanguarded over the top to start threatening the other flank. So for this game, we were playing marching columns and secure target. So I deployed from the right to left, and he deployed left to right. And then secure target, the 2 objective markers, I placed mine on the left there, the centre of the horse we're measuring to, and his objective marker is just behind that wall by the Pegasus Knights. So my Crown of the Wizard King rolled Shamanism, which means for this game he's got Awaken the Beast. The rest of my magic, my Druidism Adept has Healing Waters and Summer's Growth. Divination Master has Nova and Enemy, Fate's Judgment, The Stars Align, and Unerring Strike. His magic, he's got Spectral Blades and Hasten the Hour, and his Thaumaturgy Master has got the Hereditary Spell, and Hand of Heaven, Wrath of God, and Trial of Faith. His deployments on the bottom is pretty self-explanatory. He's got Hellhounds on the left, then his Hoarders, his Myrmidons, the Lemures with the Sentinel of Nakuja, the Furies behind them, and the Eidolons in front, then the Maw of Akan, then 12 Succubi in the field, and the other Hellhounds on the far flank. Oh, and his Blazing Glory is vanguarded up just behind that wall on the left. So demons take the first turn, and they move up aggressively on the left flank and rather cautiously on the right flank, as they don't want to move up too far and just give me easy charges in the first turn. That Blazing Glory has got a march of 16, which is pretty huge, so he manages to get up right by the impassable terrain there. Starts threatening my Yeoman. And the Eidolons move into the forest to start taking some long range. Of course, with their Darkfire, I'm failing my armor saves automatically on 1, 2, 3, or 4, and it's not a high enough strength to take my 5+ Aegis, which makes them very, very scary, especially for Grail Knights, because they're very expensive. So not an awful lot happens in shooting, but in magic he manages to get a single wound on the Duke, and he brings down the Wrath of God, which is the purple marker just in front of the... And go on to my turn 1. So this is after my moves. I've noticed that his Eidolons, he's not going to be able to charge his Maw of Akan into the centre of the unit, to the centre of the army, and I don't imagine that he'll be charging with the Sentinel of Nakuja, because 1, it affects his magic phase, and 2, that would be mad. I would definitely kill him, so he's going to have to back off with that unit, and I need to take out this side of the army before I can start facing the rest of it. I don't have enough to fight him all at once. So I use his Eidolons as cover. I move the Hippogriff, the Questing Knights, and the Grail Knights all up very aggressively, and I use the Pegasus Knights to come over, and there's a little bit of chaff in the way. I'm a little bit more cautious with the Banner of the Last Charge unit, though. I don't want the Blazing Glory to come around the house and then start hitting the back of my lines. And I also don't want to get too close to the Myrmidons, as demons are beasts, so everything in the army gets Swift Stride. Cautious for long range charges. Not a whole lot happens in magic. I get the Oaken thrown up. I try and cast Unerring Strike on the Maw of Akan, but it's dispelled, and I failed to cast some other spells. And then the Comet comes down, kills a single Realm Knight in the Damsel's unit on the left, and wipes out an entire rank of Grail Knights. So we move on to Demon's turn 2. So Blazing Glory on the left can just about see the back of the realm unit around the house, and that gives him an opportunity to charge there, but thankfully he fails that. Of course, I wouldn't have been able to... Well, I could have fled that, but it would have put me through some ruins, and it would have put me out of BSB and general range, so I would have then had to be rallying on Discipline 8, which I didn't fancy doing. So I held that charge and hoped that he failed, which thankfully he did. And his Hellhounds declared a charge on the Pegasus Knights, which we threw those 2 units and they passed their panic. We go through the rest of the movement. The Furies move up over the Eidolons to chaff up my Grail Knights and my Questing Knights. And he manages to put another 2 wounds on my Hippogriff, so he's already down to 1 wound. Besides that, he backs off a little bit with the Maw of Equitaine and shuffles the Succubi back a little bit. Of course, the Hellhounds on the fail their charge. And that's the end of Demon's turn 2, so on to my turn 2. So I have got a lot of charges to do here, so I decide I need to deal with the Maw of Equitaine as soon as I can, really. So even though he's on 1 wound, my general won't die in combat to him because he can't stomp me, and I've got the Black Knight's Tabard, so I won't die in 1 round of combat. And then I notice that I might be able to get a cascade of combats off with, through the Furies and the Eidolons. So I need to be engaged with the Eidolons, so the Banner of the Last Charge unit takes that on. And the Grail Knights and the Quests charge into the Furies. Hopefully I can get an overrun from the Furies onto the Eidolons, and then it shouldn't be too much further with Swift Stride. Goes from the Eidolons onto the Maw of Equitaine, at which point I've probably got enough combat res to deal with him quickly enough. But of course it all hinges on me managing to make those charge rolls. So post charges, thankfully I do make all of them. Of course the quests and the grails are close enough for that to be automatic. And the Banner of the Last Charge unit, is that I lose 2 knights to the woods, which isn't bad. It's not great, but it certainly be worse. And if I manage to take out the Maw, then I'm not too worried about losing 2 knights because I got his 800 odd points plus the 200 points for him being the general, so not too bad. We go on to magic. No, sorry, post move. So I rally my Pegasus Knights and they turn around to face the middle. You might have noticed that I could have charged the Aspirants into the Hellhounds far right, but I didn't notice that because I was too busy making sure that I got everything correct left. And it might have turned out to be a bad idea anyway, as the Hellhounds have lethal strike, so I'm probably better off where they are. And then the Yeoman Outriders up at the top just move around and continue to cover my behind from the units coming around the house back there. So we go through to magic. So I managed to get Oaken thrown off and get 3 knights back from Summer's Growth on the Banner of the Last Charge unit, which is very, very good. And I use the attribute to throw a wound on my Hippogriff, so he's no longer at death's door. And then we go through to combat. So I do, unsurprisingly, smash through the Eidolons and the Furies, and I do thankfully make enough of an overrun to get into Maw of Equitaine, and you can see I lost another 2 knights to the forest there, so I've lost 4 in total so far. My Duke declares a challenge with the Maw of Equitaine. He does a wound to me, and I manage to get 2 through on him, and then with a charge, flank, a big flank, 3 different banners, and 2 wounds, and a rank, for a total of 9, and he's done 1 to me. I cause enough for him to burst, and I do the rest of his wounds, and we've dealt with him, which is spectacular and very, very lucky on my behalf. Very lucky to pull that off. If I'd failed any of the rolls there, I might have just thrown my Duke and my Grail Knights into a combat that they weren't going to be able to win. So I was lucky for that. So we go on to Demon's turn 3. This is after their charges. The Hellhounds there have now got a very nice short charge against my Questing Knights, and with Lethal Strike and into my flank, there's no reason for him to not take that charge. The rest of his movement, what has he done? No, so that's just post charges, and then post movement, post magic here. So he moves his Hellhounds and his Blazing Glory around the back of the house, to, continuing to threaten there, and the Hoarders turn round, anticipating my Knight buses to start threatening the bottom of the board. Backs up the Myrmidons and the Sentinel Fuja with his Lemures. Back off a little bit more, and the Succubi turn around to face my Banner of the Last Charge unit. I get very, very lucky with magic again and only take one more wound, so I've still not died or used my Black Knight's Tabard. Then we go to post-combat, so he gets lucky with his, well, I think it's about average, really. He does well in combat with the Hellhounds and manages to kill 3 of me. And as I've only got the 2 Knights attacking back and 2 Horses, I don't do anything. But I managed to hold with my BSB in general there. And we go on to my turn 3. So my Realm Knights and my Knights Aspirant declare charges on the Hellhounds to get rid of them, and the Banner of the Last Charge declares on the Succubi bottom. Also, I managed to make all those charges because they're all either short or I've got aspirants for charges. Then post-movement, so I move my Yeoman up to block his Blazing Glory from getting a charge in on Pegasus Knights as they manage to fail their check. And I move Grail Knights up into the forest to try and cover where the Hellhounds and the Blazing Glory might come through, while also looking at the Lemures and the Myrmidons. And I think I might have also failed my march check on my general, because it's very far. So he only moves a little bit. And I also want to make sure I'm nice and close to my Damsel for throwing wounds. So there we go. I managed to get Healing Waters on my Questing Knights to make sure I don't lose quite too many of those more. And I use the attribute to brew another wound back on general. So he's now taken... He's regrown 2 or 3 wounds now. So that Damsel, that Damsel is definitely earning a keep. We go through to post-combat. So, unsurprisingly, with my 3 Knight units on the Hellhounds, I managed to bash through those. And between the impact hits and my attacks, I bring the Succubi down to 3 of them. And we go to Demon's turn 4. So he charges his Hellhounds into my Yeoman, leaving his Blazing Glory free as a single model to just move round and start threatening more significant targets. So he does that. He moves his Sentinel of Nakuja out of the way, his Lemures, uses them as covering chaff against my Grail Knights and my General. And the Hoarders and the Myrmidons shuffle around a little bit more to try and protect his objective. In Magic, he continues to have very, very poor luck trying to kill my Hippogriff. With the Magic Resistance 2, he's just rolling really. I'm getting very, very lucky with either my saves or rolling for Trial of Fate. So he's still alive somehow. And, okay, so post-combat, you might notice that I didn't lose any Yeoman, and I've managed to kill one of the Hellhounds there. So with a charge on his side and a wound on mine, my Yeoman managed to draw combat. So they did significantly better than 400 points of Questing Knights. So fairly typical of UB dice, I'd say. And we move to my turn 4. So post moves, I move my Pegasus Knights up to support my Yeoman, so that at the very least, if the dogs get out of combat, they'll be running into my Pegasus Knights, as I'm not anticipating them to wipe them out. So if they want to catch their points, they'll have to run through the Pegasus, at the very least. And I start setting myself up for some charges next turn against the rest of his army. You might also notice that I've moved pretty close to his Blazing Glory. With Unerring Strike and Fate's Judgment, I was anticipating that I'd manage to cause enough magical damage to him that I'd kill him and then not have to worry about any charges from Blazing Glory. And I moved my General behind, as I would have been charging into the front of the Lemures. I decided I didn't want to charge into a Resilience 5 infantry unit with parry. So he moves round, so he is out of the line of sight of the Hoarders, but can still see the Sentinel, and hopefully threaten him from standing too still. nothing particular happens in Magic. And we move to combat. So again, I have only lost the one yeoman, and I've managed to kill another hellhound, so that unit is continuing to hold. And nothing else happens. So Demon's turn 5. So I failed to kill the Blazing Glory last turn, so unfortunately he's now got a charge on my Questing Knights picture. So the Blazing Glory would have been in the flank of the Grail Knights, and as I've got great weapons on the quests, I decided that I'd much rather hold with the quests than get the Grails charged in the flank. I didn't flee there. To the post movement for him, so he moves his Sentinel out of arc of my Hippogriff. In hindsight, I might have been better off pointing more to the left. If he moves then to the Hippogriff's right, then I can charge him with some normal knights, and I wouldn't have given him the blind spot on the left there to hide away from me. And reshuffles his orders so that they are facing the right direction for incoming knights units. Again, very poor luck in Magic, so nothing happens there, and we go to combat. So the Hellhounds have finally killed the Yeoman and overrun into the Pegasus Knights. They do catch them, unfortunately, but as chaff, I'm expecting them to die sooner rather than later. But at least now I've caught the Hellhounds in a combat where I've got Stomp, so I'll be able to deal with them. And the Blazing Glory kills a rank Questing Knights. So I did get quite lucky there by the looks of things, but I didn't entire unit break. So thankfully I'm held for the next turn. And we go into my turn 5. So I declare a whole host of charges again. The Grail Knights and the Realm Knights are going to charge into the Lemures and try and get round and make it to the objective. I've just about got a corner to corner. No, so I don't. So I've drawn the charge from the Realm Knights up at the top there. But my base is overhanging just a touch, so I wouldn't have been able to make that in. So that's not a charge. But the Aspirants charge through the woods into the Blazing Glory flank. So I make all of those charges, and of course the Realm Knights stay there on the objective. I lose an Aspirant to the woods, but that's better going than I had with the Realm Knights earlier, so that's fine. Go to post moves. So I move my Pegasus away from the Sentinel. Again, I feel like that might have been a strange choice to move there. No, so I needed leadership on the Aspirants and the Questing Knights. Just in case I lose combat there, I need a decent objective, a decent discipline to make sure I don't break those units and flee and lose an awful lot of points there. So we go to Magic. So I managed to get Oaken thrown off. I get Healing Waters on the Aspirants to try and counteract his AP 5. I also get Waken the Beast off on them to make them Strength. No, I think I buff their Resilience so that he isn't tempted to attack them. Because if they die, then I lose a lot of combat res that they're bringing in, basically. And with Healing Waters, that allows me to take off another wound from my Hippogriff, so he's all the way from taking 3 wounds, he's back up to 2 again. Or back up to just the 1 wound taken again, which is nice. And then we go through to combat. So I am expecting to break the Lemures. I'll do enough damage between impact hits and Grail Knights that I should break them, and then they'll burst with Supernal. But then I've got to make sure that I'm out of arc of that block, otherwise they're going to flank charge me, and that's going to be rather painful. But thankfully, when you roll a 10 and 11 for overruns, that's not something to worry about. So I managed to blaze my way out of arc of the Myrmidons, leaving them completely high and dry. And then the Aspirants and Questing Knights against the Blazing Glory. He decides to attack my Damsel and try and take her out, but between her toughness 4 and her 5+ Aegis save, she's able to survive, and I only do the 2 wounds to the Blazing Glory. So he survives, ready for another turn. So we go to Demon's turn 6. So he charges his Hoarders into the flank of my Grail Knights, and he reforms his Myrmidons to be slightly deeper, and they shuffle back a little bit so that they're in range of the objective. And you can see last turn of combat. I killed a Hellhound, but otherwise that combat continues. So nothing happens in combat between as Hoarders are only AP 0 and I've got a 2+, 5+, and they're only strength 4 as well. He's wounding me on 4s and hitting me on 4s, and then I've got a 2+ and then a 5+. So nothing happens in the combat with the Hoarders and the Grail Knights between his low strength and AP, my high resilience for humans, and fantastic saves. He's not able to do anything. But I do lose combat. I might have... Or maybe we drew combat. Either way, I managed to hold, and we stayed there for another turn, and I haven't got space to reform without taking any combat. Yes, there we go. So that's post-combat for there. So I do a wound to him, he does nothing to me. I kill the Blazing Glory, but my Damsel dies to him, and I wipe out the Hellhounds up at the top. So in his magic phase for turn 6, he manages to kill a couple of Realm Knights to try and cause a panic, but thankfully I passed with the General and BSB right there. And then we go to my turn 6. So I try and declare a charge with my General into the horde of into the flank of the Hoarders to try and give some relief to the Grail Knights. But it's too long for him, so he fails forward a couple of inches. I don't think he was able to see the front of the Sentinel, and also that would have been a longer charge anyway, so he wouldn't have made that. And then we go to my movement. So I managed to make my march check with the Realm Knights, and I'm now moved round to the secondary objective. So currently he's got his 2 scoring units to my 1 there, and I'm holding the other one. It doesn't matter what I do with the other 3 units, so I don't bother moving them, as this is the last turn. So with magic, and I've got my Druidism Damsel right there, I regrow a couple of Grail Knights in that combat, and I also get plus strength on the unit. Maybe resilience. I get Awaken the Beast off on the unit. We move on to combat. Unfortunately, I've not got enough attacks there to draw combat again. And I lose combat, and then the most ridiculous series of dice rolls I will ever see. I managed to fail my Discipline 8 rerollable because I didn't lose combat by that much. I then make a high enough flee distance to not fall off the board. He then fails his restrain check to make sure that he doesn't pursue me, and then doesn't roll high enough to catch me, but does take him outside of the objective. So I lost 600 points there from the fleeing BSB. Oh, it might have been closer to... Yeah, I lose an awful lot of points there from fleeing, but I've pulled him out of the objective because he failed his restraint check. So the score swings quite considerably there, with me suddenly in the last roll of the game winning the secondary objective. So we go through to the score, and that leaves it as a 16-4 to me, which I was very, very surprised to see. My luck throughout the entire game was pretty extraordinary. I'm not sure if anyone's been counting, but I took enough wounds on the Hippogriff to kill him certainly more than once. And just those rolls at the end, like, to grab me to secondary objective, it's just... I mean, that's nothing that I could have planned for at all. And it was really, really harsh for my opponent, because otherwise it would have been a pretty close game at 7-13 otherwise. So hats off to my opponent for surviving that stretch of those dice rolls for that game. And we move on to round 2 with a win. So, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next game.